Oh, okay. What grade are you in? Okay.
Yes, it is.
At the door.
Chapin's that's on the ridge. That's all apples. Yeah, not all, but it's a lot.
I haven't seen people
And a lot of cherries there too.
like you shaded the chips that could work from
That's fun.
or like a mix.
Hopefully we'll get to that one soon. Not too soon, but soon. Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
Ag Committee will come to order. Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Chair Nyer,
Yeah. Here.
Representative Warts, Leitner,
Here.
Alexander,
Here.
Fox,
Yep.
Coons,
Present.
Pavlo,
Here.
Pies,
Present.
Devendorf, here, Reingens, here, Skaggs. Mr. Chair, you have 9 members present, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Clerk. Thank you, Clerk. Representative Fox moves to adopt the minutes from the previous meeting without objection. Meeting minutes are adopted. Today, to start off, we only have 2 presentations, but we'll start off with Farm Bureau. Nancy from Michigan Blueberries Alliance is here to talk about March Reading Month. Nancy and Josh, would you please come forward?
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Good to see you all. Chairman Nyer and members of the committee, my name is Josh Scramlin, and I am an Associate Legislative Counsel with Michigan Farm Bureau. We're the state's largest general farm organization representing over 40,000 family farms in every corner of Michigan. So this is a little different for me today because while Michigan Farm Bureau advocates for its members on legislative and regulatory matters, our organization and our members are also committed to promoting agriculture and educating the public, especially young people, about how their food is grown and produced. So each year, the American Farm Bureau Federation Foundation for Agriculture selects a children's book to receive its Book of the Year award. And if you guys look in front of you, you will see that you have the book. I meant to bring one for myself as a prop to hold up, but you know what it looks like. There it is. And these books are chosen because they portray agriculture in a positive light and an informative light. So Book of the Year selections help educate readers and foster a better public understanding of agriculture. So this year's selected book is titled I Love Blueberries, which is particularly fitting for Michigan, as blueberries are an important specialty crop grown here in our state. So joining me today is Nancy Nyquist. She's the Executive Director of the Michigan Blueberry Commission, and she will briefly share more about Michigan's blueberry industry. But before I turn it over to Nancy, I would like to mention that each year we present these books to the House and Senate Agriculture Committees, and as you return to your districts during March for Reading Month, and you visit local elementary schools, we hope that you will consider reading this book with students. So if you do, please feel free to take a photo, share it with our team, and then we'd be happy to highlight it on our communications or social media channels. So with that, I will turn it over to Nancy to just talk briefly about Michigan's blueberry industry.
Thanks, Josh. Good morning, members. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. Michigan blueberry industry, well, first I'll tell you a little bit. The commission started in 2017, so we've been around almost a decade, and we focus on research, industry-driven research that helps make our state a top blueberry grower, research that helps our farmers produce the best blueberries in the nation. In 2024, Michigan produced more than 84 million pounds of blueberries on nearly 17 acres of land. So it's a big deal, and these are multi-generation farmers that grow what I think is the best blueberries in the world. Most of Michigan's commercial blueberry production is located in southwest Michigan, where the sandy glacial soils and high water tables result in excellent blueberries. The ideal, southwest Michigan, because we've got Lake Michigan and all of the sandy soil there, that really is what makes it the best. Blueberries are grown all over the state. There's blueberries in the UP, there's blueberries in the northwest part of the state, but really the southwest Michigan is where we focus mostly on. I would encourage you all the summer, our peak season starts just early July and goes through early September. I would encourage you all to get out on a blueberry farm picking blueberries at a U-Pick or supporting a local farm that way. And if you don't have a blueberry farm in your district, I would be more than happy to connect you with growers who would love to welcome you to their farm to see how they work. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but I know in the interest of time, I wanted to just make a few brief comments and thank you again for all you do.
But I didn't catch how many acres.
Oh, I'm sorry, 17,000 acres.
Thank you.
And we've got about 500 or so growers.
Representative Fox.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And I was just wondering, are you required to wear blue as you go from place to place?
No, but I do try to stay on brand when I can.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm a great fan of blueberries, as is my family, as I was telling you earlier.
Great, thank you.
We have lots of them in our freezer.
Representative Reinings.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the book. I am very excited to read this. I think it was last year or the year before, the I Love Strawberries book was the book of the year, and it ended with the main character saying, I love blueberries, and wanting to plant more. So this book also, spoiler alert, ends with another love. So I think there's a trilogy happening, but my daughter loves this book. And I'm very excited to take it home and read it to her tonight and plan our trip to the Dexter Blueberry Farm in House District 47. So thank you for helping educate kids about this, and I'm very excited to get our garden started this year.
Great, thank you.
Just one more question. Out of the blueberries there, what's the ratio of what gets sold fresh and what is processed?
Sure, that's a great question. Thank you. In Michigan, last year, for example, it fluctuates just a little bit each year, but last year it was about 53% was the fresh market and 47% was to process. So it's almost split.
And just to follow up to that, most of that processed here in the state?
Yes.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions, I really appreciate you guys coming with the book again there, and thank you for the information on the blueberry industry.
Yes, thank
something
you.
that people don't think about until about July or August.
Right.
Thanks. With that, we'll move on. We'll have a presentation from United Dairy Industries of Michigan. Joelene Griffin, VP of Industry Relations, will lead off. We also have representation from MMPA with Ben Chapin and Country Fresh Dairy, Eric Crawford. So we'll let Jolie lead the discussion.
All right, thank you, Chair Nair, and good morning, everyone. I appreciate the invitation to talk with you today. I know we had this scheduled a few other times, but with scheduling and shutdowns and vacations and that type of thing. So excited to be able to kick off with you, especially during Agriculture Month. Full disclosure, my family has a dairy farm in Hastings, so just west of here. So I have pictures of my family and my farm throughout this presentation. I thought it added a nice personal touch so that you can really see the people behind the product. And that's what I'm here to talk about today, is dairy farming really is about the people, and it's about the animals that we care for every single day. But first, wanted to start off that I do have a professional role in the dairy industry. I work for United Dairy Industry of Michigan and Florida Dairy Farmers. We represent dairy farmers in both of those states. We do promotion and education on their behalf. As you'll hear throughout this, and I'm sure the chairman has shared from his personal experience, dairy farming is busy and it's tough. And so they need folks like us to help them connect with consumers. So Checkoff works because it was started by dairy farmers and it works for dairy farmers. And a few things that we do, as I mentioned, that promotion, we work with partnerships. I'm excited to have a couple of other folks from the industry here that can really show that the dairy industry, dairy community is a partnership of all of us from the farm until the time that milk gets to the store for you all to purchase. And in full disclosure, we don't lobby. We solely focus on that education to consumers. So I'm here to answer all of your dairy farming questions. And just like our blueberry counterparts shared some of the stats of blueberries here in Michigan, I wanted to share some of the dairy stats here in Michigan. We have about 850 farms. And as you can see from this map, we have dairy farms in almost every county except about 9 or 10 of them. And varying sizes of farms, all the way from a few cows to about 3,000 cows. We have about 440,000 cows throughout the state, again, represented on all of those farms across our state. And the average size of farms in Michigan is just over 500 cows. When we get into what those cows give us in that milk, Michigan ranks 6th in milk production, and really exciting that we rank number 1 in milk production per cow. And so why is that important? What does that mean? It means that our cows are healthy and they're well taken care of, from the crops that we grow to the care that we provide our animals. And then we have over 100 dairy processing plants throughout the state. Some of those are on-farm processing plants that are making ice cream or producing milk, and some are like those represented here with MMPA and Country Fresh. And then what I didn't include on here, I realize, is the economics that dairy provides to our state. Dairy is a really thriving community here in Michigan, and we contribute over $15.7 billion to the community. And that's through the feed that we purchase for our cows. That's through working with veterinarians and other experts. That's through all of the things that we need to purchase for our cows. And in addition, when we look at this map, we are living in these communities. My family lives on our dairy farm. They pay taxes into their local areas. My sister-in-law is the head of her PTA at the school. So we're contributing into the economy other ways as well. And then I love to throw this stat out because I think there's a lot of questions when it comes to dairy farming. We have seen the size of our farms grow, as you saw on that previous slide, but really at the heart of it, 97% of our farms are family owned and operated. That means there are multiple family members, there might be multiple generations. Like on mine, we've got 2 generations and possibly the third with some of my nieces and nephews. But we have farms that have been in the dairy industry for decades and generations, and they are really, as they grow, they're bringing more family members onto that farm. And so they're adding more cows or maybe purchasing more land so that they can take care of multiple families as well. And then cow comfort. I talked about Michigan cows giving the most milk in the entire country. And at the core of it, it's because we take care of our cows. Healthy, comfortable cows are going to give us milk, and they're going to be productive. And so, of course, it's the people behind it. It's us taking care of the calves from the moment they're born throughout their entire lives. Underneath the headline here on the screen, we've got one of our cows lounging in her stall. She's sleeping on sand bedding. Nancy talked about the sandy soil in Michigan that accommodates the blueberry bushes. Cows love to lay on sand. If you think about when you go to a beach and, you sit down and that sand kind of conforms around you, that's what it does to cows. It's also nice and cool in the summertime. And then it's inorganic so that it's not going to grow bacteria. Cows are still animals, and so we want to make sure that they are clean and well taken care of. The field photo kind of in the middle of the screen, that really talks about the crops that we grow for our cows. We work with experts to test the soil, to make sure the soil has the nutrients to grow the crops. We are in the fields making sure that the corn and soybeans and alfalfa that we're harvesting are going to be the best for our cows. Once a year, we're in the field harvesting that corn and that soybean, and that's us meal prepping for the entire year. I like to talk about Sunday nights. I personally meal prep for the week. Well, as dairy farmers, we're meal prepping for an entire year. We have one chance to make sure that those crops are healthy and that they have the nutrients that our cows need for that entire year. Up on the upper right, I have a picture of our calf barn. We get a lot of questions about, why are cows in barns? And there's a lot of good reasons for that. In Michigan, think about the weather that we've had this past week, right? Was it Sunday and Monday? We were 70 degrees, and then it just keeps cooling down this week. And I think we're getting some snow this weekend too. So we're able to keep those cows, protect them from the elements, protect them from the wind. We've had a lot of wind this winter, so we're able to keep that wind off of them by being able to close the barn. You can see on the side that's open, we've got curtains that we can flip the switch and close those if we need to. We can open them when those days get nice and warm. We also have fans in our barns. In our barns, we've got technology that allows those fans to kick on when it senses that it is 65 degrees. So those fans automatically turn on so they can have wind blowing across the cows. So really everything that we do is focused on keeping that cow comfortable. And then in the bottom, with the picture of the calf looking right at us, you can't really see the whole thing, but hopefully you can see she's got a strap underneath her head. That is her coat. We put coats on our calves when they're born in the wintertime, again, to protect them, to keep that heat close to their body so that their bodies can focus on growing, not keeping them warm in the winter months. And as we think about our cows, I've mentioned the crops, and we test the soil. We make sure that the soil has the nutrients that it needs to grow those crops. We're also thinking about it long term, and how can we make sure we're protecting the environment? So not only for this year that we have soil that is ready and able to grow those crops, but for the future, how can we make sure that we're protecting the water? Michigan has an amazing water capacity in our state. We're 12 miles from any body of water at any given time. And as farmers, we live on that land. We live close to those water sources, so we want to make sure we're always protecting it. So coming together, the entire U.S. dairy community, I think this was 10 years ago, put together these commitments that by 2050, we are going to be carbon neutral or better. And then these other two focus on water, focus on that water use, and focus on that water quality. I talked about the generations of dairy farmers who live on that land and making sure that we're protecting that water for them. We use the same well on our farm for the house, and so we're drinking that same water, and we want it to be safe for us, and we want it to be safe for our cows. And then another way that we are sustainable in dairy is using byproducts from other commodities. We grow sugar beets, a lot of sugar beets here in the state of Michigan, I'm sure in some of your districts as well. And beet pulp is a byproduct of getting that sugar out. That used to go to the landfill. And so now we know that we are able to provide it to our cows and feed it to our cows so that they have that energy source. Distiller's grain is another example. And then when we look at the southern part of the United States, I mentioned I work with dairy farmers in Florida, thinking about cotton as well. That cotton seed, once you remove the cotton boll from around it, that cotton seed was also going to the landfill. But we know that cows can digest it. They can digest these things that as humans, we can't. 80% of what cows eat are things that we could not eat. The field corn, the hay, some of these byproducts. I had a dairy farmer once say, cows are metabolic marvels. They're able to eat things that we can't and then make that milk that we can enjoy, and that gives us the nutrients that we need. And technology, we love technology in our personal lives, right? We're connected to our phones. We've got watches and rings. I'm wearing them today, but in dairy as well, we like technology. It gives us more information that allows us to take better care of our cows and also our fields. From having necklace type things on our cows, collars, to having pedometers, we can track how many steps they're taking. We can track how active they are. We can track the rumination to know when they're eating and when they're digesting, so that we have that personalized information. And if that computer system flags it for us, we can go out and find that cow, and we can take care of her, and we can give her the care that she needs. And then with the fields, I've mentioned we work with the agronomist, so taking those samples of the soil, and if the soils need more nutrients, we know where to apply it in the fields, where to specifically apply it. And then I've mentioned my peers from our processing plants that are here as well. So when milk leaves our farm, my family, we have a milkman come every morning about 10 to 10:30, so about now, who comes and picks up the milk from our farm. He's going to take a sample of it. He's going to test that it is antibiotic free. When that test comes back free and clear, he's going to load that milk onto his milk truck and take it to a processing plant. And there we turn it over to the experts. They're the ones who are going to pasteurize it. They're going to homogenize it. They're going to put it into chugs. That's where our milk goes. It's fluid milk. But there's others who are making cottage cheese. I know MMPA has a plant that they are putting into cottage cheese production. Country Fresh, they also bottle milk, and they've got chip dips as well. And then we've also got ice cream as well. And so this graphic just shows the process that takes before it gets to us. That system is regulated from the time it's on our farm until the time it gets to the store, because it's a closed system. Milk never touches human hands. It's never exposed to air, because we want to keep it safe and wholesome for our consumers to enjoy. And as I mentioned, we have over 100 processing plants for dairy in the state of Michigan. It takes a team to run a dairy farm to make sure we're doing the best for our animals. As you can see on here, I have everyone from veterinarians and nutritionists to our processors, but then other folks like plumbers, an electrician, milk truck drivers, the Department of Agriculture, who is inspecting our farms and granting us the grade A license in order to do business. They take that very seriously in making sure the farms are inspected, making sure they are clean, making sure the cows are comfortable as well. I'm realizing one aspect I didn't put up here is research. And I think about the MSU dairy farm, and I'm sure many of you have heard that we have a new dairy farm on campus. And that farm will allow companies and students and professors to have research on cows. That research then we implement on our farm. It allows us to build barns that are going to best protect our cows. It's going to allow us to adjust the rations, the feed that our cows eat. We work with dairy nutritionists to get a balanced ration for our cows. Most humans don't work with a nutritionist. We can eat whatever we want. We can eat cookies for dinner, right? But a cow, every bite that she takes is going to have the same nutrients every single time. And that's because of the work that these folks have taken and the research that comes off of farms like Michigan State University. And then I do want to touch on pasteurization. I know there have been a lot of conversations about this. And in dairy, we fully support the pasteurization of milk before consumers enjoy it. Pasteurization has been around since the 1860s. And it works to keep that milk safe. It works to protect consumers. Pasteurization is raising that milk to 161 degrees for 15 seconds. It is a very short process. The experts like we have in the room, they have technology, they have systems that make sure it's only that temperature for only that amount of time, so that it's keeping the integrity of the milk. Pasteurization does not affect the milk. It doesn't affect the fat levels, the protein, the minerals, the nutrients in that milk. What it does is it allows us to extend the shelf life of that milk so that consumers can enjoy it. And I do want to say, a couple of my bullet points down here, that in 1948, Michigan was the first state to require that all milk sold to consumers be pasteurized. And then also in 1987, that the FDA banned the interstate shipment of raw milk to consumers. That was a gold standard from around the world. We were really applauded for taking that step. This is one way that we can ensure people can enjoy dairy foods while also keeping them safe from any bacteria that may be present in that milk. And that's to say that, there is bacteria in a lot of things, but this is one step that we're making sure that milk continues to be safe. And again, the experts in our processing plants, they go to school, they have research done, they know specifically how to handle that so that it keeps that milk full and to the best that it can be for our consumers. And then we do have some resources here, and I've got some in my bag if folks are interested afterwards. And then, you know, just to end things, we are proud Michiganders. I think all of us in the room can say that. Wherever we're from, wherever we grew up, our state has a lot to offer. And I hope you've seen that dairy in Michigan has a lot to offer as well. From the care that we're giving our cows to the care that we're taking to protect that food. And one way that we can show that dairy is from Michigan is to look for the code. There's a 5-digit code on any chug, gallon of milk that you're purchasing. Michigan's code starts with 26. So that way you can know that it's from a processing plant here in Michigan. There is a website that I should have put on here, but it's Where Is My Milk From? And you can go in and you can enter the code on any container of milk that you buy, and it'll show you the processing plant. It will also show you what other products are produced at that processing plant. So that's a fun trivia question for you to take back to your family and friends tonight. And then I'll just say that, you know, we are proud dairy farmers. I love being able to watch my nieces and nephews go to the barn to help their parents and their grandparents, to see the love that they have for their cows. I tell people that my parents were born to be dairy farmers. There is nothing else that they would like to do than to take care of these animals, and it shows. It shows in the pride that they have for the animals. It shows in the product that they produce, and I will say, you know, that is the case with the other dairy farmers in our state. And I will also say that as members of the dairy industry, we are always happy to answer questions. We're always happy to connect people with dairy farmers or processing plants in their area. If you haven't visited a dairy farm or a processing plant, let's get that scheduled. Let's see if we can make that happen. But Chair, I will take any questions that anybody has.
Okay, we'll get through, and then we do have a few questions here, and then we'll try and get our other friends here up on the stage. With that, Rep. Leitner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here. And I just want to say I am a fellow farmer. I am not a dairy farmer. However, I will say I have the utmost respect for dairy farmers because when my husband and I were first married, in the first 2 years of our marriage, he was working on a dairy farm. He's a nutritionist.
Okay, great.
But you know, I milked cows with him because I didn't see him for days and days and days because he worked like 23 days on and then get a couple days off. And that was a very good experience for me. And I told him, this is not for me. I will never milk another cow a day in my life. And he's like, babe, never say never. And I'm like, I'm telling you right now, I will take that sign up on the Deja Vu down there and be one of the ugly strippers before I milk another cow. So I just want to know, it is a tough job and we need you. And I always tell people to support the dairy industry, but thank you so much because as a woman-to-woman farmer, I think people just don't even understand even visiting there unless you put them down in a pit and have them, you know, going through the process, even with the milkers, how hard of a job it is and how hard it is to maintain in this environment because we are really good at producing milk in Michigan. And unfortunately, a lot of our smaller family farms are having to sell to the bigger family farms just because, you know, we've had so much volatility in the purchase of milk products is what I'm going to say. So thank you for that. So I just wanted to say like how much respect I have for you guys and keep going out there and kicking butt and taking names. So thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for that interesting picture. Rep. Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, I'm a recovering dairy farmer by trade. And you said a few terms. I really like the metabolic marvel term.
Yeah.
I also believe that another good term to describe cows, you mentioned the digestive and rumen, but can you please explain, I believe that cows are the first biodigester ever, right? Because they have multiple stomachs. Can you describe how the rumen works so my colleagues can understand the terms that you laid out there?
Yeah.
And I did like the chart that you had up there first that showed the thumb of Michigan being, you know, little Wisconsin, basically. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, and we can get you that if you're interested. So Yes, as a recovering dairy farmer, thank you for being here. So metabolic marvels. Cows have one stomach and 4 compartments. And you're really gonna like push me back to my animal science days, but so just in like a short explanation, cows are going to eat. They're going to take a bite of food, and that food is going to go down into, they're chewing it, right? And it's going to go down into their rumen. And it's going to digest, and it's going to take some of the nutrients out, take some of the water out, and then they are going to regurgitate that, and they are going to chew their cud. So if you've heard the term chewing the cud, cows really do that. And it's an opportunity for them to, get it down into smaller pieces and really get out of that food what they need to get out of that food. When a cow is laying in a stall or standing wherever and she is chewing her cud, she is content. She is taken care of. She is doing her job. And then they will swallow that again, and then it will go through the omesum, reticulum, omesum, abomasum. Sorry, I have to say them all together. But each one of those compartments is so different and acts in a different way and pulls out different nutrients, minerals, but also pulls out a different amount of water for that cow. Anything else you would add? Yeah. Thank you.
Representative Kuntz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I get your opinion on raw milk?
Yeah.
Should we be selling this? I understand 1948, I understand interstate.
Mm-hmm.
Should this be available for consumption?
Absolutely not. Raw milk should not be available for consumption. As a dairy farmer, as a professional in the dairy industry, I believe that everybody, myself, my family included, should drink pasteurized milk. We created pasteurization for a reason, and it has worked for over 160 years. There's a risk in anything we do, and if we can remove that risk, we absolutely should. When we go to other countries, we don't drink the water there because there is a risk to us. Our bodies aren't used to things that are going on in that country, just like when people consume raw milk, they are not exposed to the same germs and bacteria that those cows have been exposed to that they might be shedding. Even with us on the farm every single day, that's not a risk that we take. We go to the grocery store and we buy our milk just as everyone else does. So no, raw milk should not be allowed for consumption. That's my personal and professional opinion.
That was my question. Follow up, Mr. Chair, where are the raw milk bills at now? Which committee are they even in?
They were passed out of committee. They're waiting for on the floor.
Which committee did they go through?
They went government ops.
Whatever Matic is connected to.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Representative Fox.
Well, I probably should be dead. I grew up on raw milk. So but I would love a copy of your brochure. I saw that as you flashed by on raw milk. But is it true that chocolate milk comes from brown cows? Now, here's my real question. So I saw your carbon neutral comments going through.
Yeah.
What are we going to do in Michigan and America to protect ourselves from the ding-a-ling stuff that they had going on in the Netherlands with cow farts and what have you? Okay, and so what can we do to avoid that whole get rid of the carbon mentality? Because I think that it's something that's scary.
Yeah, so I know there are a lot of studies that are going on farms to really look at the life cycle. There's a life cycle analysis, so that includes everything from the fields all the way to the cow, all the way to the processing plant. And I know there are farms from some of the DFA and MMPA members who have participated in those studies. So we're really trying to understand what that is and where we're at. And that's thanks to universities like Michigan State, but also there are universities all across the country who are doing this research that we can tap into. On farms, a lot of the things that we're doing, we've been doing for a long time. So it's doing cover crops. That's a term that in the fall, when we harvest that corn or that soybeans, what we're doing is we're adding another crop so that it can be in the ground over the winter time. It's establishing roots in that soil. It's going to hold that soil in place during windy days. Like I said, we've had a lot of wind this winter, and so it's going to hold that soil in. So that way we don't have that soil erosion. We're also really limiting the amount of fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers, I should say, that we put on our ground. Again, going back to the testing and knowing what's there. And then in terms of, some other technology, we have, I believe there's 8 to 10 farms in the state of Michigan that have digesters. And so they're able to take that manure and I don't know all of the specific technology, but they're able to take that manure and then collect the methane that is going to go and then be used in houses in those areas of where that digester is located. So, the system works together, and there's a lot of pieces in that system, but I think we're heading in the right direction. And we can learn a lot from those other countries, too. Thank
you.
Yep.
Representative Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. I'm neither a farmer nor a recovering dairy farmer, nor do I really drink milk, getting up there in age. But I have learned a couple of things. One, I learned recently that cows like the cold. So Michigan is a perfect place for us to grow our dairy industry. Also learned on the Kent County Commission the importance of having robust supply chain for different agricultural commodities. So my question is, so we're sixth in milk production, 850 farms, mostly family farms, fantastic. How do we continue to grow the dairy industry in Michigan? Yeah. And does that have anything to do with improving, expanding supply chain?
Mm-hmm. That's a really great question. We continue to see growth in the state of Michigan. I failed to mention this earlier, but we've got dairy processing plants in Michigan that are currently expanding. I mentioned there's a plant in Remus that is going to be making cottage cheese, right? And protein is top of people's minds right now, so we're excited for that. There's also expansion over on the west side of the state in the Fairlife plant. And then Chobani recently purchased the La Colombe. That is the milk coffee beverages. And so there's going to be some expansion there. And so I think any time that we as a state can support that expansion to make sure that we're getting dairy in new ways for consumers and in ways that they're going to enjoy, that's ultimately going to lead back to supporting our family dairy farmers all across our state. And anytime we can buy milk, and I know you said you don't drink milk, but anytime you can buy cottage cheese or even ice cream, we all have to enjoy ice cream, right? That's all going to help support the dairy farmer and then the dairy community in general. But Michigan is really poised right now to have those 3 expansions taking place.
That's great. Thank you so much. And I do take Lactaid so that I can get at least a little dairy down. So I'm trying to do my part. Thanks. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. Ben and Eric will be able to highlight some of those expansions that will be happening shortly here. Representative Pavlo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your testimony. My question is the recent flipping of the food chart had an impact on your industry, or do you anticipate that?
Well, the recent dietary guidelines, as you mentioned, they really put whole foods at the top. And dairy is absolutely a whole food. And so we, as a dairy community, we now see the support of any fat level of milk. Whereas before it was limited to fat-free or low-fat milk, but now we can offer whole fat milk. And then kind of along those same lines, the Whole Milk for Schools Act was also signed that first or second week of January. And that's going to allow whole milk to be given to kids in school. There's still some things that need to be worked out from the supply side of things and a cost. Also, it can only be offered at lunch, so I know schools are going to have to work on that and, figure out if they can provide a third option. Schools, as you all know, are stretched thin right now, and especially their employees. So I think really, what January did with those two announcements was really bring to light milk and dairy in a really good way. And that's what we've all known in the industry is the health benefits that it provides, the 13 essential nutrients, the ways it can be consumed in many different, formats as well. So I do think that there is, a lot of positivity towards dairy in light of those new dietary guidelines. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Representative Devendorf.
I just wanted to thank you for being here today. I come from a long line of dairy farmers, certainly not myself, but since the 18th century in the state of New York. So thank you very much. My soul thirsts for cheese.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to petition and lobby for us to have a dairy farming book next year, or raspberries for our friend Marissa. That's all.
So I know that there was an ice cream book along those same lines 5-6 years ago. Yeah. So we can see if we can get some copies. Mm-hmm.
Representative Pies.
Thank you. And this just reminded me that last week I was having blueberries in my cottage cheese.
Delicious.
So healthy all around. Yes. My first question was I was wondering about how much is exported out of Michigan and to other countries. But then somebody started talking about the triangle flip, and you had mentioned that now schools could get whole milk.
Mm-hmm.
So then previously they were not getting whole milk. So I'm wondering, why not just keep it as it is, or is it more processing costs then to give the kids just like whatever they had before, 4% or whatever? I'm wondering why you're going back then to whole milk.
Yeah, so I'll touch on the first one. Much of the milk I think the majority of the milk that we produce on our farms in Michigan is processed here in the state. I know we do have in some of the cooperatives that are represented in Michigan, they do have plants in other states that they'll send milk to. So domestic exports is very little. And I do know that we do export some to Canada. I don't have those numbers right off the top of my head. And then your question about whole milk in school. So, we want to, there's a long history. Whole milk used to be provided in schools, and then in 2011, it was removed. It was seen as a way to, ensure that kids weren't consuming more calories, and there was really an emphasis on low fat and fat-free at that time. What we know, though, is with whole milk, with that 3.25% fat, it's not even 100% fat, it's 3.25% fat, we know that it keeps us fuller longer. And so if we're eating whole fat yogurt or whole fat milk in the morning, it's gonna allow us to stay fuller through lunch. And that's what it's doing to kiddos too, as they're in school. The last thing we want is a child who is hungry thinking about when their next meal is. And so this can really help to help them focus on the education at their school. And and then in terms of the price, so it's anywhere from 3 cents to 8 cents more per carton of milk. And with those schools on such a restricted funding, you all know that probably better than I do, but they need to really watch everything that they're spending. And the reason that it costs more is because before, when we were not taking whole milk to schools, we were able to take that fat and sell it in different ways. But I do know that the dairy industry is working together to come up with ways that we can get that lowered back down, that cost.
Representative Reinigans.
Thank you, Chair. Rep Skaggs' question about supply chains made me wonder if the dairy industry in Michigan is having any projections of changes based on maybe fertilizer. I don't know where you get your fertilizer. I know we've had some tariff situation from Canada, and then there's less fertilizer coming out of the Middle East. And then also shipping. You know, you said we don't really ship out of the country, but we do ship domestically, and obviously diesel cost has spiked in the last week. So I just didn't know if there's projections or thoughts of our strategic reserve of dairy that we could tap.
Yeah, so I don't have any of those specific numbers with the fertilizer. You know, with the situation that's happening overseas, that's obviously going to affect us as well. That's where a lot of ingredients for that fertilizer are from. I don't know if Farm Bureau's in the room and still in the room and could speak to that, but I know that's changing every single day. Farmers are resourceful. They will, you know, use and get what they need. And, you know, on a lot of dairy farms, we use the manure as fertilizer. So it's like that you know, sustainability system. But farmers will figure it out. You know, unfortunately, it might raise the cost. And as we think about rising inputs, whether it's fertilizer, whether it's, you know, even our groceries that we're buying, and the price of milk right now is pretty low. And so farmers aren't getting for their milk what they should be to break even. It is in the, you know, I think it was $16.50 in February, so $16.50 for every 100 pounds of milk that they sell. And break even right now is about $20 for farms. So farmers are resourceful. They will, you know, they will do what they need to do. One concern that we have is as these prices increase for inputs, we will see more of our farmers having to exit the business. And as someone mentioned earlier, those cows will go to other family farms who are expanding their businesses. So it's a lot, there's a lot of different things that come into play when we think about that too. And I went off from your original question, so I apologize. You had asked about the fertilizer, but what was the other part of your question?
I didn't know if in order to prevent spikes in milk costs, because that's a staple for families, right? I hear about it every day in my district. That I'm worried that cost will go up because of the inputs that you're mentioning that are being spiked because of this war and other things. So I was just asking about the diesel cost of shipping. Thankfully, a lot of milk produced in Michigan is processed in Michigan and then consumed in Michigan. So hopefully that'll help reserve it. But I didn't know if there was some sort of like strategic dairy reserve. It's not the kind of thing that can just sit around like oil, you know, so that's why I was just curious.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to add one point to that too when you talked about the cost for consumers. So when we look at a serving of milk, it's 8 ounces. And 8 ounces of milk really costs about 25 to 28 cents per serving. And when we think about all of the nutrients that provides, it really is an economical benefit because it is so cost effective.
Thank you, Jolie. Would Eric and Ben like to come up and give some comments on their perspectives from a processor/farmer perspective?
I'll let you go first. Well, thank you for having me today. I am Ben Chapin. I currently work for Michigan Milk Producers Association. We're a farmer-owned cooperative that represents dairy farm and families across the Great Lakes region, so Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin. We market about just under 5 billion pounds of milk a year. So in my role, I'm the Director of Member Services, and so I work with our field staff on milk quality, grade A compliance, as well as sustainability and animal welfare. And I think Joelene did a very nice job of going through the dairy industry and the work that's involved. You know, our staff works very closely with customers on sustainability initiatives. We work very closely with MDARD on compliance initiatives and quality initiatives. And it's been a fun ride. I've been with the association for, I always say, all my life. I grew up on a dairy farm. My parents still dairy farm. I still live on a dairy farm, but Michigan Milk keeps me busy enough that I don't do a lot of work on the dairy farm anymore. So in my last 15 years, I have seen the industry expand. Certainly we've went through periods of consolidation. anytime we hit a low price point, we do see some of the smaller farms exit the industry. We also have an aging population of farms, and unfortunately on a lot of those farms are just not the next generation coming. But it's a strong industry, and as a cooperative, our goal is to support, our farms, for their growth. And so with that, we've actually, Joelene mentioned 2 expansions that we're doing. We actually have 3. We have 3 sites in Michigan. We have a plant in Constantine, Michigan. We have a plant in Ovid, Michigan. And then recently we purchased the Remus plant. Constantine is ultrafiltration, which is where we remove the, we separate the fat from the milk, and then we ultrafilter it down so it's a very highly dense protein product. And so your Greek yogurt, your cottage cheese, any of the protein dairy drinks that are out there, they really like that product. What we're doing at Constantine, though, kind of on the subject of sustainability, is the byproduct of that process is what we call permeate. So when you remove the sugars out of that product, you have this permeate, which has typically been fed as animal feed. What we're actually doing at Constantine, that is going to go through a distillation process and be made into aviation grade fuel, so ethanol. So technology is a wonderful thing. We're learning a lot in the industry, and there's just a lot of good things coming with protein and what we can do with byproducts. I feel like I'm just kind of rambling, so I'll kind of stop there if you guys have any questions, or let Eric go.
Yeah. All right, so I'm Eric Crawford. I work out of Country Fresh in Grand Rapids, Michigan, so Kent County. And I'm on the sales side, so I call on Gordon Food Service, so I'm on the food service side. So the neat thing out of Country Fresh is we make a lot of their private label products for Gordon Food Service. And but the big picture here is that we're part of DFA, Dairy Farmers of America, and our chair is a farmer owner, and so thank you for your business. He's my boss, and we just appreciate it. And I think the big thing, and I know Joelene did a really nice job, is just explaining how interconnected we all are and how we all share in what we feel is milk is having a really good moment right now, and especially with the GLP-1s that are out there and folks not eating as much. And so what we've found, where it used to be an inside joke, we'd look at the obituaries and see, oh no, there's another cottage cheese buyer going out, leaving. Now cottage cheese is having that moment, and we're seeing trends spiking. So one of the things, kind of talking about growth, out of Country Fresh, we're making some changes there, and we doubled our capacity with cottage cheese just this past month, added in 4 new vats so that we can start making more cottage cheese. Because what we're seeing is the demand is outstripping what we can supply. And so we on the production side, we're doing everything we can, and we appreciate the support from the dairy farmers to see that long-term vision, because again, we're not reporting into us, the stockholders. We're reporting into the dairy farmers, and they see the importance of putting in the work and the expense to look long-term. And we're really starting to see that a lot with the dairy industry and catching up. So I wanted to thank you for that. But I think one of the things that we do at the processing plant that is important is food safety is our top priority, because we want to make sure that our consumers are always taken care of. We think customer is king. We need to make sure that we're taking care of them, because it only takes a few or one missed opportunity, someone gets sick, and then we find that can trickle down and snowball. So we always put food safety first. Joelene mentioned that their driver will come at 10:30. They'll test the milk. When it gets to Country Fresh, we test it before it ever enters any of the pipes. If there's any form of any type of antibiotics or anything that shouldn't be there, the truck is kicked out. So we test it there. We run it through the systems. It gets tested before it gets bottled. We have all the QA scientists right on site So it's important for us, and we recognize the importance to our customers as well. So talked a little bit about customer growth, animal care. I know Joelene touched on that. And I just want to say is I appreciate as the farmers continue to invest in the processors. It really impacts our communities. There's a study that was done by Implan, economic impact for every dollar spent translates to roughly $8 in return to the community. So that's just a neat little statistic. So as dairy continues to grow and gets more important, more of that can get back into the communities and back into your districts.
I'm not seeing any questions from the committee, but I'd like to sort of expand. Why is Michigan sort of prime for expanded processing opportunities, and what can we do here in Lansing here to help facilitate those expansions?
I can touch on just real quick, but just the kind of what I mentioned before, where we're seeing demand outstrip the capacity. So our plants, just like my counterparts' plants, we're adding as much capacity as we can to catch up. So we're playing kind of in a catch-up mode. So as opportunities come, we're always looking to, again, meet demand. Unfortunately, I would say in general, we turned down recently in the last year plus, we've turned down business. We've had customers come to us and say, hey, I need 40,000 more gallons of half pints for our district or our for this customer. And we just don't have the capacity to do it. So as those opportunities come up, and we appreciate all the support we can get from this group and from the teams. So
I would just add just overall support for the industry and the processors that are looking to invest in the state. Joelene mentioned Chobani. They weren't in our state here just a few years ago, and now they are. And you look at what they're doing out in New York. If things go well here in Michigan, there very well could be more to come from some of these other customers and processors that come into the state. And that'll in turn support the dairy farmers and the communities around them.
I got one more question. Representative Fox, if you could keep it tight.
Yes, sir. Just something anecdotal for you. I was Commission on Aging Director in Newaygo County for 7 years, and there the cottage cheese disappeared first at the meal sites, and it's directly related to chewing ability. So something for you to share. As our state gets an older population, you're going to see your sales increase.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's great news.
Sure. All right. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the information. Enjoyed it. Seeing no absent members and no further business before the committee. Sorry. Warts. Representative Kuntz excuses the absent members of the committee. Seeing no objections and having no further business, we are adjourned.